Ambassador Li Chun stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber and felt very small. The room was enormous, built by species who had traveled the stars for thousands of years. Above her, the ceiling showed the swirling colors of a neutron star. Around her, seated in a perfect circle, were the representatives of 43 different alien species. Chun had prepared for this moment her entire life. She wore her best formal suit, dark blue with Earth's symbol on the shoulder. In her hands, she held a datapad containing 200 years of human history since first contact. It was a story of peace, of learning, of friendship with the stars. She began to speak. Honored members of the Council, I come before you today to request protection under the Preservation Accords. Humanity has walked among the stars for 2 centuries now. In that time, we have not raised weapons. We have not claimed territory that wasn't ours. We have not taken what we didn't earn through fair trade. Chun's voice was steady and calm. She had practiced this speech 1,000 times. Instead, we have shared our art, our music, our stories. Human doctors have developed medicines that save millions across 12 worlds. Human engineers have built stations that serve as homes for species who had none. We have proven that a young species can contribute to galactic civilization through creation, not destruction. She looked around the circle. Some of the aliens were paying attention. Others seemed bored. A few were having quiet conversations among themselves, their translation devices humming softly. Chun continued. We ask for protected status because we want to continue on this path. We want to grow as a peaceful people. We want our children to inherit a galaxy where kindness matters more than strength. It was a good speech. Chun believed every word. Then the Vax ambassador stood up. The Vax were tall, almost skeletal beings with gray skin and too many joints in their limbs. Their ambassador wore decorative metal bands around his thin arms. When he spoke, his voice came out in clicks and whistles that the translation system turned into cold, precise words. The Council recognizes the Vax Consortium. The Chamber's I announced. Thank you, the Vax ambassador said. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. Earth's solar system cannot be granted protected status because it has already been claimed under commercial development rights. Chun felt her heart drop into her stomach. Excuse me? She said. The Vax ambassador gestured, and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed legal documents, hundreds of them, covered in alien script. 147 years ago, the Vax Consortium filed proper claims under Article 7 of the Colonial Charter. We have been conducting resource extraction operations in the Sol system for nearly 1.5 centuries. Mars, Europa, Titan, and various asteroids have been designated as industrial zones. Chun's hands were shaking now. That's impossible. We would have known. We would have seen your ships. Oh, but you did, the Vax ambassador replied. His tone was almost amused. Your scientists called them unexplained phenomena. Your governments called them classified secrets. We've been very careful not to disturb the inhabited planet itself, of course. Earth was classified as a nature preserve, in a sense. But the rest of your system? That belongs to us. Chun looked to the council president, a wise-looking being from one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Surely he would say something. Surely this was against the rules. The president touched his control panel. Does anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Silence. Very well. The council finds that the Vax Consortium's claims are properly filed and legally binding. Humanity's petition for protected status is denied. This session is concluded. Wait. Chun's voice cracked. You can't just... We're talking about our home, our solar system. How can you sell it without even telling us? Another alien spoke up, this one from a species Chun didn't recognize. Ambassador Chen, Perhaps you should have invested more in legal counsel and less in hospitals and universities. The galaxy operates on established law. Your ignorance of that law doesn't invalidate it. Several aliens made sounds that the translation system interpreted as laughter. Chun stood there, frozen. 2 centuries of peace. 2 centuries of trying to be good neighbors to the galaxy. And it meant nothing. They had been robbed, and everyone knew, and no one cared. The Vax ambassador approached her as the chamber began to empty. Up close, he smelled like copper and old machinery. Don't look so sad, Ambassador. Your planet itself is safe. We have no interest in Earth. Too messy. Too many complications. But Mars? Europa? Those moons and planets are sitting empty, full of resources. Surely you can understand the economic sense of using them. People live on those worlds, Chun said quietly. Human colonies, families, children. Then they should relocate. We'll give them 90 days. That's more generous than we've been with other species. The Vax ambassador tilted his head. You know, Ambassador, there's something almost charming about humanity's approach. All that art and medicine and kindness. It's sweet. Innocent, even. But this is a big galaxy, and nice people don't last long in it. You should have built warships instead of concert halls. He walked away, leaving Chun alone in the emptying chamber. She made her way back to her ship on numb legs. Her staff was waiting for her, their faces full of hope. They had watched the hearing on monitors. They had heard every word. But somehow, they still thought she might have good news. Ambassador? Her aide asked. What happens now? Chum sat down heavily in her chair. She pulled up a communication link to Earth, to the United Human Government, to the billions of people who had trusted her to protect them. What did she tell them? How did she explain that their solar system had been sold out from under them while they were building schools and writing poetry? How did she tell them that the galaxy saw their 200 years of peace as weakness? She began recording her message. This is Ambassador Li Chun. The petition has been denied. The Vax Consortium claims legal ownership of our solar system outside of Earth itself. They have been mining our worlds for almost 150 years without our knowledge. The Galactic Council has ruled in their favor. Her voice was flat now, empty of the hope she'd carried into that chamber. They see our peace as stupidity. They see our kindness as an invitation to take what they want. They don't respect diplomacy. They only respect power, and we chose not to have power. We thought we were being evolved. We thought we were being better than our violent past. Chun paused. She thought about all the history books she'd read, all the wars humanity had fought against itself before they learned better, before they chose a different path. I was wrong, she said finally. We were all wrong. They don't want us to be peaceful. They want us to be victims. Sending my final recommendations now. Do with them what you will. She attached her files to the message. Then she sat in the dark of her ship and wondered what humanity would choose to do next. In the Galactic Council chamber, now empty except for maintenance drones, the holographic display of Earth's solar system still glowed softly. Red marks indicated Vax mining operations. They covered almost everything except the small blue planet where billions of humans lived. Believing they were citizens of a civilized galaxy, they would learn. Differently soon enough, 6 months had passed since Ambassador Chun's message reached Earth. 6 months since humanity learned the truth about their place in the galaxy. The Vax fleet arrived at Mars on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. 12 massive ships, each one the size of a city, descended through the thin Martian atmosphere. They didn't ask permission. They didn't announce themselves. They simply came. Commander Torres was in the colony's control center when the alarms started screaming. She pulled up the external cameras and felt her blood run cold. The vac ships were landing right on top of the farming districts. Greenhouses that had taken decades to build were crushed under their landing struts like paper. "Open a channel," Torres ordered. Her voice was steady, even though her hands wanted to shake. "This is Mars Colony 1 to approaching vessels. You are landing on inhabited structures. People live here. Repeat, people live here. Please adjust your approach." The response came back in flat, mechanical tones. "Mars Colony 1, you have 90 days to evacuate. This region is designated for industrial development. Please gather your belongings and depart in an orderly fashion. Resistance will be met with suppression protocols." Torres stared at the screen. "We have 15,000 people here. Families. Where exactly do you expect us to go?" "That is not our concern. You have 90 days." The channel went dead. Torres tried to reach Earth, but the communication lines were jammed. The vacs were blocking all signals. She looked at her staff, saw the fear in their eyes. These were scientists, farmers, teachers. They had come to Mars to build something beautiful. Now they were being evicted from their own homes. "Get everyone to the shelters," Torres said quietly. "And find me something we can use as a weapon. Anything." Her second-in-command looked shocked. "Commander, we don't have weapons. We're a civilian colony." "Then find me something that can become a weapon. Tools, mining equipment." "I don't care. We're not leaving without a fight." "Then find me something that can become a weapon. Tools, mining equipment." "I don't care. We're not leaving without a fight." On Europa, it was even worse. The vacs didn't bother with warnings there. They simply used what they called suppression protocols. Stun fields that knocked out every human in a 10-kilometer radius. When people woke up, they were being loaded onto transport ships like cargo. A young woman named Sarah Kim managed to hide during the first sweep. She watched from an ice cavern as vac soldiers dragged unconscious humans onto their ships. She recorded everything on her personal device, her hand shaking so hard the video came out blurry. When one colonist woke up too early and started fighting, a vac soldier pulled out a weapon and fired. The human fell and didn't get back up. The vac soldier made a note on a datapad and moved on, like he had just swatted an insect. Sarah kept recording. She kept hiding, and she kept thinking about how humanity had spent 200 years being peaceful, being kind, being everything they thought the galaxy wanted them to be. Look where it had gotten them. On Luna, Earth's moon, the situation exploded into violence. 200 colonists gathered in the main square to protest peacefully. They held signs. They sang songs. They did everything the right way, the civilized way, the way humanity had learned to solve problems. The Vax overseer looked at them like they were a waste of his time. "You have 90 days, he announced through speakers. "This protest is pointless. Leave peacefully or be removed. This is our home," someone shouted from the crowd. "We were born here. Our children were born here." The Vax overseer made a gesture. His soldiers raised their weapons. "You are interfering with commercial development. Final warning. Disperse." The crowd didn't move. They stood there, 200 humans holding signs and singing songs, believing that surely, no one would hurt peaceful protesters. The Vax soldiers fired. When it was over, all 200 humans lay dead in the lunar dust. The Vax overseer made a note in his report. Establish compliance parameters through demonstration of consequences. Expect remaining population to be more cooperative. Back on Earth, in a secure bunker beneath the mountains of Switzerland, humanity's leaders watched the footage from Luna. They watched it in complete silence. Some were crying. Some looked sick. All of them looked furious. General Sarah Okonkwo was the oldest person in the room. She was 83 years old, and until 6 months ago, She had been running the Museum of Human Military History in Lagos. It was a small museum. Not many people visited it. Most humans didn't want to remember the wars they used to fight. Now, Okonkwo stood before the United Human Council in her old uniform, which she had dug out of storage. It still fit, barely. "I spent 40 years preserving our violent past," she said. Her voice was rough but strong. "I kept the records. I maintained the databases. I studied every war, every battle, every weapon we ever designed. Most people called it a waste of time. They said we'd evolved beyond all that. They said we'd never need that knowledge." Again, she pulled up a hologram showing hundreds of weapons. Designs, tanks, fighters, missiles, drones, things that humanity hadn't built in 2 centuries. "Turns out I was right to keep these," Okonkwo continued. "The galaxy thinks we're harmless because we chose peace. They think we're weak because we built hospitals instead of battleships. They killed 200 peaceful protesters because they don't understand something fundamental about humanity." The room was silent. "We didn't stop being violent because we couldn't do violence anymore," Okonkwo said. "We stopped because we got too good at it. We almost destroyed ourselves. We knew what we were capable of, and it scared us. So we made a choice. We chose to be better." She looked around the room, making eye contact with every leader present. "They've taken that choice away from us. They've killed our people. They've stolen our worlds. They've proven that peace only works when everyone chooses it. And they've chosen violence. So now we have to choose it too." The vote was unanimous. Not a single person voted against it. Humanity would go to war, but first, they would go silent. All across human space, communication stopped. Earth went dark. The colonies stopped responding. Human ships were called to home ports. Every human in the galaxy who could come home did so. The Vax thought they'd won. They thought humans were hiding, scared, preparing to surrender. They were wrong. In shipyards across Earth, massive construction projects began. The designs came from Okonkwo's museum, but they were updated with 200 years of technological advancement. Humans had been building medical equipment and research stations. Turns out, the same skills made excellent weapons. In training centers, millions of volunteers learned how to fight. Many of them were old enough to remember the stories their grandparents told. Stories of World War II, of Vietnam, of conflicts that seemed ancient now. But the knowledge had been preserved. The lessons had been kept. Humans learned quickly. They always had. General Okonkwo stood in the command center and watched the numbers climb. Ships being built. Soldiers being trained. Weapons being manufactured. It was happening so fast. Too fast, maybe. They were rushing, taking shortcuts, improvising. But then she thought about those 200 people on Luna. She thought about the families being dragged off Europa. She thought about Commander Torres on Mars, probably dead by now, trying to defend her colony with mining tools. No, they weren't moving too fast. They weren't moving fast enough. "How long until the first fleet is ready?" she asked. 3 weeks, General, her aide replied. "The ships won't be perfect, but they'll fly and they'll fight." "Good enough. Prepare a message to all human forces." "What should it say, General?" Okonkwo thought for a moment. Then she smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Tell them this. For 200 years, we chose peace. We chose kindness. We chose to be better than our ancestors. And they spat on that choice. They killed us for being peaceful. So now we're going to show them what humans are like when we stop being peaceful. We're going to show them what we were trying to protect them from." 3 weeks later, the first human warship launched from Earth. It was called the UHSV Patience. The name was deliberate. Humanity's patience had just run out. The Vax Second Fleet arrived at Mars 3 months after the humans had gone silent. Command had sent them to investigate why the First Fleet had stopped reporting. They expected to find the fleet processing resources, with humans either evacuated or working as laborers. Instead, they found debris. Captain Dexfer of the Vax battleship Prophet's Edge stared at his screens in confusion. Where the First Fleet should have been, there was nothing but wreckage. 12 massive ships, reduced to scattered metal floating in Mars orbit. Scan for survivors, Dexfer ordered, and find out what happened here. His crew worked in silence. The scans came back strange. The damage patterns didn't match any known weapon. Some ships looked like they'd been hit by meteors. Others had been cut in half by something incredibly hot. A few just seemed to have exploded from the inside. "Sir," his sensor officer said nervously, "I'm picking up human signatures on Mars. A lot of them. They're still down there." "How many?" "All of them, sir. All 15,000. Plus more. There are humans here who weren't here before." Dexter didn't understand. The humans should have left. They had no weapons. They had no military. They were artists and doctors and teachers. How could they destroy an entire fleet? "Open a channel to Mars Colony," he ordered. "Let's ask them." The screen flickered to life. A human woman appeared. She wore some kind of uniform Dexter didn't recognize. Behind her, he could see other humans, all wearing the same thing. They looked calm. Too calm. "This is Commander Torres of Mars Defense Force," the woman said. "You're in human territory. Leave now, or you'll end up like your friends." Dexter's hands tightened on his command console. "You destroyed the First Fleet? That's impossible. You have no military capabilities, no weapons, no training." Torres smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "We didn't have those things 3 months ago," she said. "Things change. Leave. Now. This is your only warning." Dexter cut the channel. His pride was hurt. His entire species was known for military superiority. He had 40 ships. The humans had what? Some converted mining equipment? Maybe a few makeshift weapons? "All ships, battle formation," he ordered. "Prepare to deploy suppression protocols. These primitives need to learn their place." The Second Fleet moved toward Mars. As they approached, Dexter noticed something odd. Small objects were floating in space around the planet. Thousands of them. Too small to be ships. Too numerous to be satellites. "What are those?" he asked. His sensor officer's voice was shaking. "Sir, they're rocks. Just rocks. Asteroids. But they're moving. They're accelerating. The first kinetic strike hit the Prophet's Edge like a hammer from God. A rock the size of a car. Accelerated to a fraction of light speed. Punched through the ship's shields like they didn't exist. The impact sent Dexter flying across the bridge. Alarm screamed. Hull breaches on every deck. Then the second rock hit. Then the third. Then hundreds more. Dexter pulled himself up and watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. The humans weren't using fancy alien weapons. They were throwing rocks. But they were throwing them so fast with such precision that each one hit like a nuclear bomb. "Return fire," Dexter screamed. "Destroy those launchers." But there were no launchers. The humans had just accelerated asteroids using modified mining equipment. And there were thousands of asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. Thousands of weapons that cost humans nothing but electricity. The Second Fleet lasted 17 minutes. Dexter's ship was dying. Life support was failing. Half his crew was dead. He managed to send one final message to the Vax Consortium before the ship's power failed completely. "They're not what we thought. The humans. They're not peaceful. They're not peaceful. They were just waiting. Get more ships. Get all the ships. And for the love of profit, don't underestimate them again. The Prophet's Edge exploded silently in the cold of space. News of the second fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy within hours. The Vax Consortium called an emergency meeting. The other 5 species in their alliance were panicking. This is impossible, one representative insisted. Humans have no military tradition, no warriors, no concept of organized violence. A Vax intelligence officer pulled up records on a hologram. Very old records from before humans had made contact with the galaxy. That's not exactly true, the officer said quietly. Before first contact, humans fought wars constantly against each other. For thousands of years, some of their conflicts killed millions. They developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet several times over. The room went silent. When they joined the galactic community, they chose to stop. They dismantled their weapons. They converted their warships into cargo vessels. We all assumed they did this because they were weak, because they'd realized they couldn't compete with galactic military powers. The intelligence officer changed the image. It showed human military history. Thousands of battles. Millions of dead. Weapons of horrifying creativity and efficiency. They stopped, the officer continued, because they scared themselves. They got too good at killing each other. So they made a choice to be different. We mistook that choice for inability. We thought they couldn't fight. They absolutely can fight. They just chose not to. One of the consortium members stood up, all 6 of their arms shaking. So what do? They've destroyed 2 fleets. They're fortifying every human colony. Our intelligence says they're building ships. Hundreds of ships. And they're using tactics we've never seen before. What tactics? Another member asked. The intelligence officer pulled up battle footage from Mars. They used deception, fake signals, false retreats. They hide weapons in civilian structures. They adapt constantly. Watch this. The footage showed a human ship being chased by 3 Vax fighters. The human ship seemed to be running away, damaged, leaking fuel. The Vax fighters closed in for the kill. Then the human ship spun around, and what looked like fuel was actually some kind of net made of metallic cables. The net tangled the Vax fighters, which crashed into each other. They fight dirty, the intelligence officer said. By our standards, anyway. They don't follow proper military doctrine. They don't fight for honor or glory. They fight to win, and they'll use any method that works. Another video showed human soldiers on Europa. They were retaking the colony from Vax occupation forces. But instead of attacking directly, they cut the power to the Vax base. Then they pumped the air full of some kind of gas that made the Vax soldiers hallucinate. By the time the Vax figured out what was happening, the humans had already reclaimed every major installation. This isn't war, one consortium member said in disgust. This is terrorism. The intelligence officer turned to face them. No, this is what happens when you push a peaceful species into violence. They don't have traditions of honorable combat. They don't have rules about fair fighting. They just have 200 years of suppressed military innovation and a really good reason to be angry. In space near Europa, Captain James Oduya stood on the bridge of the UHSV Patience and watched the colony below. They'd just finished liberating it. 300 humans had been held prisoner by the Vax. All of them were safe now. The Vax occupation force was either dead or captured. Oduya was young, only 35. His parents had been diplomats. His grandparents had been diplomats. His whole family believed in peace, in talking through problems, in finding common ground. He'd volunteered for military service. The day after Luna, the day 200 peaceful protesters were murdered. Captain, his communications officer called. We're receiving a message from the Vax Consortium. They want to negotiate. Tell them we'll talk after we've liberated every human colony, Oduya replied. And after they've paid reparations. And after they've handed over everyone responsible for Luna. Sir, they're saying that's unacceptable. They're threatening to escalate. Oduya laughed. It was a bitter sound. Escalate? They killed 200 unarmed protesters. They tried to evict millions of humans from their homes. They've been stealing from us for 150 years. How exactly do they plan to escalate beyond that? He walked to the front of the bridge, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vax were gathering more ships. They were preparing for a bigger war. They thought humans would back down once the fighting got serious. They still didn't understand. Send them this message, Oduya said. Humanity spent 2 centuries proving we didn't need violence to be successful. You forced us to remember what we're capable of when we stopped being nice. You wanted war. Congratulations, you're getting one. And we're going to show you what happens when humans stop holding back. The message was sent. Across the galaxy, the Vax Consortium prepared for total war. They called in allies. They built more ships. They trained more soldiers. They still thought they could win. They had no idea what was coming. 4 months after Mars, Ambassador Li Chun stood in the Galactic Council chamber again. But this time, everything was different. Human warships surrounded the station. Not threatening. Not attacking. Just there, waiting. 100 ships, each one broadcasting the same message. The Council will hear humanity's terms. Chun walked to the center of the chamber just like she had done before. But she wasn't asking for anything now. She was telling them how things would be. The Council members looked terrified. They should be. In 4 months, humanity had destroyed the entire Vax Consortium's military power. Every Vax mining operation in human space was gone. Every Vax ship that entered the solar system was captured or destroyed. The humans had fought with a cold efficiency that scared the entire galaxy. Honored Council, Chun began. Her voice was different now, harder. I come before you with humanity's terms. Not requests, terms. She pulled up a hologram showing the Vax Consortium's assets. The Vax will pay full reparations for all resources stolen from human space. Every credit they made from our system will be returned with interest. This is not negotiable. A Vax representative tried to stand up. A human soldier, standing guard behind Chun, moved his hand to his weapon. The Vax sat back down quickly. Second, Chen continued, all Vax leadership involved in the occupation of human colonies will be turned over for trial. This includes the overseer who ordered the Luna massacre. Justice will be served. Third, the preservation accords will be completely rewritten. They failed because they had no teeth. No enforcement. From this day forward, humanity will serve as protector guardians of the accords. Any species that attacks a peaceful civilization will answer to us. The council president finally spoke. His voice was shaking. Ambassador Chun, you're asking us to give you authority over the entire council. That's unprecedented. Chun turned to look at him. I'm not asking. Look outside your windows. We have the ships. We have the weapons. We have the will. We could take what we want by force. But we're not doing that. Because unlike the Vax, we still believe in peace. We just understand now that peace needs guardians. One of the other council members stood up. She was from a small species, one that had been threatened by the Vax years ago, but had no power to fight back. We accept humanity's terms, she said quickly. And we request human protection under the new accords. Another species joined in. Then another. Within minutes, 20 different species were asking for human protection. They'd all been bullied or threatened by stronger species. They'd all been told that peace was weakness. Now, someone was finally offering to protect the peaceful ones. The council president looked around at the chaos. He looked at Chun. He looked at the human warships outside. Finally, he nodded. The Council accepts humanity's terms. The Accords will be rewritten. Humanity will serve as protector guardians. Chun allowed herself a small smile. One more thing. The Accords will be renamed. From this day forward, they're the Terran Accords. So everyone remembers who enforces them. The Vax representatives were escorted away in restraints. They would face trial for their crimes. Chun had pushed for execution, but in the end, she'd chosen imprisonment instead. Not because they deserved mercy, but because she wanted humanity to be better than them, even in victory. Later, Chun stood alone at the memorial on Luna. 200 names were carved into black stone. 200 people who had died for the crime of peaceful protest. Fresh flowers lay at the base, brought by humans who traveled from Earth just to pay their respects. Chun placed her hand on the cold stone and closed her eyes. "We won," she whispered, "but not the way we wanted to. We proved that our philosophy was right. Peace is better. Cooperation is better. Kindness is better. But we had to become warriors to protect those ideas. I don't know if that makes us hypocrites or realists." She stood there in the lunar silence for a long time. Back on Earth, General Okonkwo was overseeing the demilitarization process. Most of the human military was standing down. The ships would be converted to patrol vessels. The soldiers would return to civilian life. Humanity was choosing peace again, but not complete peace. Never again. "How many ships are we keeping active?" Okonkwo asked her aide. 50, General. Plus rapid response teams on every major colony. Enough to respond to threats, but not enough to be an occupation force. Okonkwo nodded. She was tired. So tired. She'd spent 40 years preserving military history, hoping it would never be needed again. Then she'd spent 4 months using that history to wage war. Now she was 84 years old and just wanted to rest. "What about the museum?" she asked. "It's being expanded, General. The government wants to make it a required visit for all school children. They want every human to understand what we're capable of when we have to be." "Good," Okonkwo said. "We should never forget. We spent 200 years trying to forget, and look what happened. We should remember. We should teach our children. But we should also teach them why we chose peace in the first place." Her aide hesitated. "General, there's something else. The Council wants to award you their highest honor. For your service to galactic peace." Okonkwo laughed bitterly. "Peace? I killed thousands of Vax soldiers. I designed strategies that destroyed entire fleets. I turned humanity back into warriors. You also made sure no other species will have to face what we faced," the aide said quietly. "Because of you, peaceful species across the galaxy now have protection. That's worth something." Maybe it was. Okonkwo wasn't sure anymore. Captain James Oduya stood down from active duty 6 months after the war ended. He'd done his job. The colonies were liberated. The Vax were defeated. Justice was served, but he couldn't stop seeing the faces of the Vax soldiers he'd killed. They had families too. They had been following orders. Many of them probably didn't even agree with what their government was doing. War was messy like that. There were no clean victories. He went back to school, studying galactic law. If humanity was going to be the guardian of peace, they needed people who understood the legal systems. People who could prevent wars before they started. But he kept his uniform. Just in case. 100 years later, the galaxy was different. The Terran Accords had teeth now. When a strong species tried to bully a weak one, human ships appeared. Usually, that was enough. The reputation humans had built in those 4 months of war was enough to make most species think twice. Sometimes it wasn't enough. Sometimes humans had to fight. But they always chose peace first, always tried diplomacy first, always gave people a chance to be better. And when they did fight, they fought to win quickly and decisively, minimizing casualties on all sides when possible. The galaxy had learned what Chun knew in that council chamber so long ago. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their capacity for violence. It was their ability to choose peace while being fully capable of violence. A young student stood in the Museum of Human Military History, now a massive complex in Geneva. She looked at the exhibits showing ancient Earth wars. Then she looked at the displays from the Vax conflict, as historians called it now. The final exhibit was a simple plaque with words carved deep. We chose peace. They forced us to choose violence. We won. Now we choose peace again, but we'll never forget what we're capable of. This is not a celebration of war. This is a reminder of why we choose peace. And a promise. Anyone who threatens the peaceful will have to go through us first. Below, it was a quote from General Okonkwo, recorded just before she died at age 97. Peace isn't the absence of the capacity for violence. It's the conscious choice not to use that capacity. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way. We forgot for 200 years, and it cost us. Now we remember. We're peaceful. We're kind. We're cooperative. But we're also ready. And that makes all the difference. The student read the words carefully. She was 11 years old, and this was her first visit to the museum. Her teacher said it was important, that every human needed to understand their history. She understood now. Humans were peaceful because they chose to be, not because they had to be. That choice meant something because they could choose differently. Outside the museum, human ships patrolled the solar system, watching, protecting, ready but hoping they'd never be needed. Across the galaxy, on 43 different worlds, species lived in peace under the protection of the Terran Accords. They built art and music and culture. They raised their children in safety. They traded and talked and grew, because humanity had learned a hard truth and was willing to enforce it. Peace is precious. Peace is fragile. And peace needs guardians who are strong enough to protect it, but wise enough to choose it. The galaxy was better for it. And humanity, scarred but unbroken, stood watch.